Hey folks, and welcome to this week's Rocky Brand, as I say, YouTube live stream. Rocky Brand YouTube live stream. Been looking forward to this one because I get to chat to someone that I like a lot. As some of you may know, I recently announced that I was starting up a mentoring service, and put out a post on LinkedIn a few weeks ago to make that live and make it a reality. That was a big step. One of those, I think they call it eat the frog moments, where you are, hey Lise, thanks for joining. I can't see my chat. Hey Fuda. So we've got some people live, which is always awesome. At least I would have Caz here to speak to me today, so that's cool. But it's great to have people live on the stream. If you've got any questions for either myself or Caz, then please pop them into the chat, and we'll take a look at those as we're having our discussion. So I've known Caz for a few years now. We're both, I think I got to know Caz through a private Facebook group that we're in. There's a bunch of us, bunch of older designers, all grumble and mumble away in the background in that little group. And I got to know Caz through that. We started working together on projects, logo projects and other graphic design projects. And Caz has been doing this almost as long as I have, 20 year career as a graphic designer, so he's been around the block the same as I have. And so I've been essentially mentoring Caz for the past, I don't know, he can probably clarify when we bring him in, a couple of years, since we've been working together, and I've been sort of mentoring him on the side as we were working. And I thought it'd be really cool to bring Caz onto the stream. And just he's an amazing logo designer and graphic designer, and it's always cool to get a chat with someone who is in the same field and learn a bit about his journey, and see how it maybe is similar to mine or how his differs. And we'll have a chat obviously around mentoring and how that's affected his pathway and his thoughts on being a designer in the design industry in 2022 and moving forward. We've got more people join. I didn't even notice. I was too busy yapping. Hey David, so glad you make it on here. Unfortunately, the next person, I can't read the language. I'm so sorry. So I can't give you a personal shout out because I can't read your name. Chloe, hello stranger. I've known Chloe for a long time. Great to see you on the stream. And Henry's joined as well. Good, we've got a little bunch here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the Zoom and we're going to say hi to Caz. So hopefully Caz has his mic unmuted. Yes, he does.
Hey,
so
how you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm so happy to have you on here. We've got quite a few people join straight away. So we've had Amy just join as well. So it's that Italian attraction that you've got about you, isn't it, Caz? It's that Italian essence, bringing everybody to the stream. But yeah, thanks for coming on. And like I said, we've known one another for time's been weird the past couple of years. What with all that's been happening, globally, time is a weird concept. So I forgot how long we've kind of known one another, but it has definitely been. The group's been around for a few years now, and we started working together probably on projects maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So
it has been.
So I'm going to just ask you some questions throughout this. This is just going to be, we've known one another for a while, so I'm not nervous about this. Hopefully you're not nervous, and you might be a little bit nervous because it's a live stream, but it's just me and you having a chat. So it's going to be fairly informal, but there will be, a certain amount of formal questions that I'll ask just to get things kind of moving along nicely. And as I say, hopefully we'll get some questions from people in the stream as we're going through. What we're talking about might spark some questions for them. So I'm going to open it up and just say, why don't you give us an insight into your journey as a designer, from that fresh-faced Caz who's never had a client say, I don't like it yet, and they're like, you're bursting with ideas, there's no limitations. Give us that, a little insight into how you got interested in design and where you are to today.
Real, yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, absolute pleasure to be here, and it's really exciting to see that people have joined. So, yeah, really looking forward to kind of chatting to you about my journey and the mentoring. So, yeah, I guess fresh-faced, Kaz. I think design for me started from a very young age. I was into design from probably about 10 years old. My dad had a good friend who was of the old school design era, drawing boards, Pantone markers, and he used to just create some amazing, well, anything really. He was a fantastic illustrator. He was an Italian guy, and he drew these like cherubs one day, and I was just like mesmerized by the way he was doing stuff. And I kind of wanted to learn more about what graphic design was. And so from about the age of 13, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was going to be a graphic designer. It was either that or a hairdresser, which is what my dad's trade was.
Yeah.
And my dad, quite easily took me out of the hairdressing and went down the graphic design route. And I just geared everything in my sort of studies towards graphic design. I took up art, I took up the creative stuff like, I've been playing guitar since I was 6. I was into music, and that creativity sort of overlapped with those with that sort of learning. And then then I kind of went into college and did a couple of years on a BTEC. Got quite a high grade. Was very arrogant as a young designer, and left college to take a junior role because I actually decided I was one of those designers that didn't go to university. I was so on the ball with learning outside of like actual formal learning that I took a junior designer role, which I was fortunate to get. And that arrogant designer that he thought it was the new Draplin had come out and basically been put right back down to earth. And I started my career, doing what a lot of junior designers do, a lot of artworking. I laugh about it now, but I used to design incontinence pad packaging as a junior designer. And, I had all of the fun stuff, latex glove boxes I've designed. And it was it was a good opportunity to kind of learn and what the creative industry was in the commercial world compared to the learning and the education, the world that there was so much that you didn't get taught. So there was a lot that I learned, and quite the arrogance had turned for admiration for my peers. It was pure admiration for the people that I was working with, and I started to listen well, and I think as a junior designer, as a younger designer, that is probably one of the biggest assets you have, is to listen and really kind of take in your environment and those agencies that you're in. So I was working in an agency. That's essentially what I did. I got a job at an agency as a junior designer. I stayed there for 5 years until I was kind of like, we'll call it middleweight designer if we want to give it a label. And then in that time, I'd done a lot of learning, but I'd also kind of found certain areas that I sort of warmed to, which was definitely logo design. Definitely, I enjoyed doing packaging. I kind of wasn't really designing websites at that point. But eventually my career would get me into web design. And then I went into sort of catalog design catalogs, and then into more creative direction for clients. It was a real wide range of graphics and into photography and TV. I worked on some TV commercials in the UK. But at the back of all that was, logo design and branding was what I was really passionate about. And then, the world of web design, which then changed its name to UI UX and had all these other sub levels of titles as well. So the digital world became a part of an offering as well. And, you do what you have to do as a designer. The game changes so much. You just learn. And then I kind of, worked on in I think it was 4 or 5 agencies before getting made redundant once, twice. But the first time was due to closure of a company, and then I found a new job, and then was made redundant again. And at that point in 2017, it was a case of now it's time for me to go solo, and I kind of dived into the world of freelancing. Yeah, so that's kind of that's quite a good
Yeah,
history
so
lesson for
it's
everybody.
it's fairly similar story to mine. You've been involved when it's one of the things about being older designers is that yeah, we've come through the transition of web really coming into play, into it all, and as you say, UI and UX, and they all become specialisms. And I've seen the work that you've done on some of the UI and UX stuff, and it's really, really good. I know that you use Adobe XD quite a bit, don't you, for laying that stuff? And I haven't got a clue about that. I'm thoroughly sort of in the old dog, no new tricks kind of camp. I'm very much I know the things that I want to do, but I've also done TV work and stuff like that, and I feel very privileged for doing that. It gives you a lot of understanding of other areas, and like you said, one of the things as a younger designer is just listen, have your ear open, don't make decisions too early into I just want to be a logo designer, I just want to be this. Try everything. Try to get involved, especially if you're working in an agency. Try to butt your way into other different projects that are ongoing and see if you can kind of even just hang around in the background. But one of the things that kind of comes from that as well is like you said, the web came along and you were doing logo design, packaging design, brochure design. Did you how did that affect you in some of those agencies in terms of did you feel that it was a choice to learn that, or did you feel you had to learn it in order to remain competitive as a designer? I need to be a web designer. I need to do this. I need to do that. And a lot of that can come from, you see a lot of adverts and stuff, especially on LinkedIn and things, and, looking for a graphic designer, and you look at all the things that they list that they want. Ideally, you can do this, and you can do my weekly shopping, and you can, mow my lawn, all of this stuff. And you're like, whatever happened to a graphic designer having a core skill set? Now you're expected to be a web designer, social media manager, all this stuff. So, when you left that agency to start up on your own, without going into sort of any details of why you left, other than you want to do your own thing, how did you feel at that point? Were you excited? Were you like stupidly nervous? Was it both?
I think there's definitely a few things to kind of touch on. I mean, first of all, I think in terms of the agencies that I'd worked in, the label or the amount of work that I did, or the things that I had to learn on the way, kind of stemmed from my own interests. They weren't necessarily forced onto me, but I'm also a huge advocate of the best learning is learning on the job, that kind of baptism of fire, because I feel like if you ask yourself to pick up and try and learn something in the background, most of the time, if it's on a false brief or something that's just made up, you kind of don't really give it your all, because there's not really a stake involved in that. There's not an element of fear. And I think that element of fear sometimes is what drives you to learn new skills. When I got made redundant, the first time I found another job. By the time I got made redundant again and set up on my own, I felt like at that point I had nothing to lose. I kind of, yes, I had things that I needed to get and pay for, like we all do. We have bills to pay, etc. But at the same time, I feel that it was an opportunity to just try, and then I can say I tried it. So yeah, there was fear, but there was a general excitement. But at the same time, I guess I was also quite humble in that sense. I think because I'd been made redundant the first time, I was super. The second time didn't feel. It's like anything. The second time round is less scarier. and at that point, I think I was just fed up of working for other people. And, you know, that was going to happen all the time.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. People, you know, you can sometimes see it as the grass is greener. You know, I remember working in studios and seeing how much the client was being charged for a project and how much I was actually being paid at the end of the month. And I'm like, God, you know, I'm the one that did all of the work on that. And, you know, I can see how much they, but yeah, when you're an employee, that you don't take into consideration all of the other costs that there is in running a business, and it can often look like, oh, I'm going to go out on my own. You know, if I can charge that much money, you know, then I'll only need to do 2 jobs a year, and I'm sorted. But there is so much more to it than that. There's getting the clients in the first place to spend that sort of money with you. You know, so there is a heritage that's needed and a trust level that needs to be built before people will spend that money with you. But it's interesting, you kind of said, you know, that you had nothing else to lose, and, you know, at least if you gave it a try, you could kind of say, well, I gave it a try. So that kind of gives me a thought that you were, you know, you were still happy, you know, you would have still gone back to, you know, try to get a job in a studio if it hadn't worked out. Is that what you would have done?
If it hadn't worked out, you know, I don't think I would have had any other choice. I think, you know, I've often asked myself, you know, I've had always a love-hate relationship, like a lot of people do with their own careers, especially when you've been in a long time. Is, do I, you know, try something new? Do I do something different? You know, if it doesn't work out, what can I do? You know, can I go and work in a music shop? Could I, you know? And I think at that point it was like, well, I would probably just go back and try and get a graphic design job somewhere, and kind of just keep working for somebody else. But, you know, I'm pleased to say it's kept going since 2017, and
got through the first 1 or 2 difficult years of those are the make or break times.
And a lot of the time, I started off my freelance career working for other agencies. So essentially, I'd left because I'd worked in, say, 4 or 5 agencies in the local area. I just kind of said to myself, look, I'll just get in touch and start working on a kind of day rate with those agencies, go in and be a hired gun, really, as and when they needed it. And that's essentially how most of my business was, just an agency related, you know, working directly with agencies. I guess more like a B2B designer.
I remember that. Remember that well when when we first started working together, and I was kind of asking, you know, where, you know, what kinds of clients you had. And it's one of the things that I recommend to people who are, it's one of those things that you can do if you're struggling to find clients, is to reach out to, you know, it doesn't even have to be local agencies, it could be agencies anywhere, because we can all work remotely, is to reach out to agencies and see if they have any, you know, any need for freelance or subcontracted designers to take on overflow work. And, you know, sometimes they'll do that. But that kind of leads me into something that I want to kind of talk about, was that, and I know that, you know, I know that Caz kind of suffered from this a little bit, in that in some ways, you know, Caz worked inside agencies and got a monthly wage and did the work inside the agencies, and then started up on his own and started to work with the agencies as a subcontractor. But from early discussions, you know, this is probably where the mentoring started, to be honest, with myself and Caz, was me finding out how much work Caz was doing for these agencies, how much he was being paid for that work, and the timescales he was being given. And to be honest, I thought it was outrageous. I thought he was being treated incredibly poorly, and it was all one-sided from my perspective looking in. So Caz is like a lot of people, like we all can, myself included, we're inside our situation, and so we're getting this work and we're like, oh, I'm so lucky I'm getting this work. You know, there's other people who are struggling for work. But then you've kind of put yourself back into almost an employee situation again, where you're relying on them bringing you the work. And there's a lot of unscrupulous agencies out there who will play on the fact that there are a lot of designers looking for work, and they will use that against you by saying things like, oh, you know, so if you maybe you give them a quote and oh no, we can't do it. We haven't got the budget for that much. We've only got a budget of this amount. And you're like, well, I can't really do it for that. Oh, well, there are plenty of other designers out there who can. But then if you're worried and you're stressed about not having enough work coming in, the chances are you probably will say, okay, I'll do it for that this time. But next time I'll need to do it for higher. But that never happens. You end up setting a new lower level with that agency, and they will continue to use that against you. And if anything, they'll probably keep pushing it down until it becomes just unfeasible for you to do the work. But some people end up doing it for next to nothing just because of that guarantee of the work coming in. And I remember having a pretty plain talk with Caz about this. I do think this is where sort of the mentoring kind of came in, where Caz was able to have someone who was, I was charging a lot more than he was. My clients had to work to my time scales. It wasn't about me working to their time scales, and the payment terms are all on my, so basically it was, if you want to work with me or me to do the work, then I set out my rules. And Caz didn't really have that. And so I started to advise Caz that maybe he needs to take a long, hard look at some of these agencies and the way they were treating him. And Caz, I'll let you kind of pick up from there.
Sure.
And so,
yeah, so I think it came down to, you had a skill, you were a graphic designer or a designer or a creative person. And no matter the fact at that point, if it was 2017, my maths is probably wrong, probably 17 years in the game. I was inexperienced at that next stage of being my own boss, my own freelancer. I didn't understand necessarily the whole pricing situation, and I didn't necessarily value myself and my work and my worth. And I think, if we look at business in general, it can be quite a sinister, dark place where people are looking to monetize on everyone. And I think at that point it was, hey, like you said, very lucky that I'm getting lots of work. But at the same time, I was really working harder than I've ever done before, and I wasn't in control. And I'd sort of maybe convinced myself that I was in control. I thought that, hey, I'm working for myself, I'm in control. But I'm not in control because I'm still a slave to those things that are, tangible. Time is a funny one, especially in our industry, where if you come in and you got to get through all of that sort of work, and it's a creative job list and etc. Well, maybe creativity doesn't want to shine on you today, and isn't the right time to do it. What do you do then when you're freelancing at an agency expected to produce? There's an issue around the amount of work, because people want to extract the most they can for the littlest of money in some situations. So I guess through my own mistakes, and generally was kind of suffering, and I think Cole made me realize that through our conversations, through talking about how and learning how he was working, and seeing his process, I was kind of warming around to go, well, look, I want a piece of this, because there's no reason why I shouldn't. And I think it starts with valuing yourself more. Cole knows me very well. The kind of anxieties that I struggle with, and the very kind of I'm quite humble in my approach, and it took a while to start to sort of be kind to myself and say, you are worth that extra money. You are worth to be in control of those timescales. I think, you're right. I mean, I started to work with Cole and Pixels Inc. as an agency, but it was very different to how I was working with other agencies. Here I had gone into a situation where I was doing work for Cole, and I was being valued. And, he was asking me, like, how long do you need to get something done? And he was paying me the right money that I deserved to get the job done. And transparency, honesty, those values that you expect to love in humans, were there in a working relationship. So I think it's really important to kind of start to value yourself and not fall in that kind of the freelance trap. And I don't think I could have got out of that without, your help, to be honest. There's,
It's
just
difficult. It's difficult to pull yourself out. Because as I say, I have a mentor and I have a coach. I would still be where I was 10 years ago if I hadn't, hired a coach. And I'd said to Caz before we were kind of starting on this chat, I don't want this to turn into like almost a hard sell for mentoring, because anyone who watches my stuff knows that's not what I'm about. I'm not into that at all. I'm just what I'm hoping will come from this, and that's why I wanted Caz to come on, because I could say all the things, and it's coming from me. And yeah. But Cole, there's something in this for you. There's the mentoring. And so I wanted Caz to come on and kind of talk about his experience, because we're all so similar. And I think one of the things is, Caz mentioned the self-worth. And it's actually, I personally believe that it's probably, it's more difficult for designers who have been in the industry for a long time to develop that self-worth, because you're just kind of... I've worked in quite a few agencies, and I've had good times and stuff, and there was good people there, but a lot of the time you weren't given the credit for doing the work. The business owner was the one who took the credit, went to the awards and all the rest of it, and you were just, expected to do your job, and, you might have got a pat on the head or whatever. But I had another boss who would never say nice things about a piece of work. He would always pick a fault or make up a fault, because that would then mean he was in charge. And that kind of stuff grinds you down, and it becomes part of your being as a designer, and you almost don't want to speak up for yourself, and you just do the work and you work through the motions. And it's harder if you've been in that for a long time. As a newer designer coming in, if you are aware of a lot of the things that, I only became aware of sort of 13, 14 years in after hiring a coach, Caz became aware of 17 years in, if you're able to grasp these things early in your journey, you're going to have just such a great time, because you're going to be in control of everything that that comes in. Now, Henry mentioned in the chat that Henry's, and I know this as well from chats with Henry. Henry's an employee, so he works inside a company, and he works very, very hard, and he is making inroads into kind of being heard and being seen more inside that agency as an expert in his area and in his field, because a lot of the time that's difficult. Now, I'm not really an expert in kind of mentoring people who are inside agencies. I do know someone that is. It's a different dynamic, employee to boss, as it is to freelancer to client who's hired you. There are similarities, but there are clear differences. And it was so cool to see Caz making the steps, and kind of I'd get the odd message saying, I doubled a logo price to a client. I sent a proposal out. I don't know if it's too much, but that's having someone, Lee's put in there, being able to connect to your peers and have discussions with peers is always really helpful. Sitting and stewing on your own and worrying and overanalyzing things, you can often catastrophize what the outcome's going to be about having. So Caz could have had a conversation with his agency saying, look, I can't do it in that time scale because I need more time to do concept work, which means I'm going to have to charge you more. And you just catastrophize that by going, they're going to tell me that, okay, that's fine, we'll get someone else to do it. And so you end up not having that discussion. But if you have someone to talk to, what often happens, and this is what I'll say to people, is if you have a chat with someone and they help you out of a hole, and that doesn't need to be a mentor, it could just be a friend, family member, the chances are you will probably feel uplifted and brave after that conversation for a very short period of time. And it's like kind of like a golden hour moment. And in that golden hour, that's when you want to take action, when you're feeling brave and you've got that confidence back and you've got a spring in your step. That's when you want to send the email or make the phone call, because there's sort of a curve that can happen where you start to drift off and the confidence and the self-analysis comes in, and you just end up going back down into where you were, and then you don't do anything about it. And what happens is you'll beat yourself up because you know you should have done it and you know you should be doing it, but you're not doing it, and so you have this inner battle between yourself, and it makes you feel worse. I know Caz has been there, I know I've been there, and I know probably many of you who are watching this are probably nodding your head saying, yeah, I've done that as well, because it's just human nature. It's what we do to ourselves. And so I was very, Caz and I, there was a period of time where Caz and I were doing a lot of work together because I was getting quite a lot of projects coming in, and I needed, I wanted Caz's super creative logo brain, because one of the things is Caz is very, because of the way he's had to work, he is very fast at coming up with, and moving through conceptual ideas, which is great, but you can only do that for so long, then you become burned out. So we had quite a lot of work going on, so there was a lot of opportunity for us to talk and a lot of opportunity for me to help Caz with, his pricing, and Caz mentioned that, he would be in on the calls when I'd be presenting the project to the client, and he would often be very kind and say, oh, that was really cool how you did that and how you dealt with that objection and move it forward. And that's where, a lot of that stuff doesn't really happen anymore inside not just creative agencies, but other businesses where you don't have the peer-to-peer mentorship type thing. You're just expected to get on with it, and you graduated from college or whatever. You've got a portfolio. You're a graphic designer. Just get on with it, and it can be really difficult. So having the opportunity to speak to someone who's just a little bit further on than you, to hear how they're dealing with things, can make a big difference. And for Caz, I'm going to jump ahead and sort of one of my questions, because just talking about the pricing thing, you sent me a message on, I think, Thursday last week, and I could tell that there was, you had that spring in your step, just through just through text, through Facebook Messenger, and you'd done two things that day. Hopefully you can remember what those two things are. Talk about what it is that you did.
So I'd sent a proposal out for some logo work, which was in line with the pricing that we'd discussed that I should be charging. And I also pitched a logo design where I was confident with one idea. So prior to that, I was very much a person that would pitch multiple ideas. And Cole had always said to me, look, start to present one idea and really nail that idea and test it, etc. And I was always nervous about that, but in the back of my mind, I think with anybody's advice, it's about kind of implementing it when you feel right to implement that advice. And I presented one idea. I was very confident in that one idea. I'd allowed the time that I allocated to the project to really invest in that one idea and fully test it. So it was what I call bulletproof, and presented it, and they absolutely loved it. They didn't question where the other ideas were. They just, no changes, straight in, job done, really happy. And I think as well, to go back to the idea around pricing, I think what I sometimes find in the in the industry is there's a lot of advice out there where people are kind of selling this quick win mentality that you can just put your price up. Well, for me, it was never about putting my price up. It was about understanding what I was doing for the little money that I was charging. and understanding the worth, because I, as a logo designer, did lots of process work. I did lots of sketching, I did lots of research, did lots of checking.
Yes, you do.
I did lots, behind the scenes. I was putting together 30, 40 page presentations and presenting those to clients, and I was charging 200 quid for it. So, that's not about me doubling my money to try and get more out of people. It was about understanding that actually by working out what I was delivering for the money I was charging, I was working for about £3 an hour. So, it's about understanding your worth again. So I think we can't be arrogant and think that, hey, I'm going to put my prices up to 10 grand tomorrow or whatever, because I think that messes with our mindset. It devalues what we do, because money becomes the motive and the motivator. And I don't think it's about that.
Yeah.
It really is about understanding your own worth and the pride that you have in your work. And that's what Cole allowed me to understand more. And so, yeah, kind of like it was more of an incremental price rise. It wasn't like one day I was one price and the next day I wasn't. It was like little by little, I just edged it up a bit more, and I felt more confident, and I felt like I was adding, I was being true to myself. And that's essentially, is how I kind of got to the pricing that I should be charging, with the experience that I've got and such things. If I wanted to say, award-winning designer or whatever on proposals, I can, and start to really, sell.
Selling's hard for a lot of people. It's a lot, as people pleasers, we find it difficult, but we have to ask for the sale at some point. Can't kind of like skirt around the edges, because that's when things start to get a little bit shaky. And Lisa's saying there that the one idea thing really takes guts. I'm not there yet, but I think having a mentor when you're about to make such changes is invaluable. It is just about having someone to kind of be a sounding board almost as well, because as a mentor, mentoring's, it's not about, I don't do anything for the mentee. It's up to the mentee to do it. It's up to Caz to do the work. I can't do it for him. And Caz probably won't mind me saying that, when we were really busy, when we were doing a lot of work together, Caz was making those increases in prices, and he wasn't doing the one logo concept approach. That took a while. But what happened when so I got involved in some bigger jobs, which didn't really require, it was mostly brand strategy stuff, so a lot of the design work kind of got parked for a bit. And I remember Caz and I didn't speak for a little while, and then when I did speak to Caz again, he had kind of started to backpedal a little bit, and was charging out 300 quid logos again. And that's one of the things where I wanted to mention, in that, so with Caz and I, it was a casual mentorship thing. So there wasn't really we didn't have we weren't meeting every week and keeping things up. It was when we had a chance to chat, or if we were working on projects, that was fine because there was constant communication. But we're also running our own businesses, and we kind of get, you get caught up in your own businesses. And the difference between that style of mentoring, where there can be gaps and you can kind of fall back into the old way of doing things, with a structured mentorship, it's like, weekly, bi-weekly call. So there's that sort of action time is constantly being built upon until you build up the habits and the confidence that you don't really need it. I think Caz is definitely now at a stage where he is, he's doing the one logo concept. He's put out a proposal with the most money he's ever put out for a logo, and that's with us not really having that much conversation. And that was, hats off to him. That was without him sending anything to me saying, what do you think of this price? Do you think this is too much? Because we've had that back and forth quite a few times, haven't we, Caz? You think this is too much? What about this? Oh, I don't know. I think I'm charging too much for that. And it's like, well, why do you think you're charging too much for that? Why do you feel that's too much? And then when it got to the end of it, it wasn't too much. It's just because if you're charging, you're not valuing yourself for so long that when you start to look at, you can value yourself and say, I am good at what I do. People are telling me I'm good at what I do. That's one of the things that I've got here. Actually, one of my other questions is, are you good at accepting compliments from clients? When someone says that you've done a great job, do you fully take on their words, or do you kind of just brush them aside and go, I'm just doing my job, it's what I get paid for?
I'm terrible at taking compliments. I'm absolutely shocking at it. I don't particularly really think myself, I don't. It's hard because I'm one of those guys that thinks that, my work's as best as it can be. Yeah, I definitely deliver what I can, but obviously I'm, like most designers, always in admiration for other designers and think I'm probably not, very good, or, talk about looking at other designers' portfolios and being very,
I wish my work was as good as that. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I found a meme the other day, and it was the picture of Kanye West, and it said, I've got it on my screen actually, it says, I'm a creative genius. This is what a quote apparently he said, I'm a creative genius and there's no other way to word it. And Jimi Hendrix, obviously as a guitarist, I resonate with Jimi Hendrix, but I don't consider myself to be the best. I don't like compliments, they distract me. So, I guess I'm kind of more in the Jimi Hendrix camp.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that I don't like compliments, because I think compliments are a nice thing to receive. And of course, I do enjoy receiving compliments. I think it's like listening to it more.
Yeah, don't take that. That's the thing with the compliment side of it, is that we can brush them aside. I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing my job. But there's nothing wrong with kind of, taking them on board. A good thing to do is to just have a little book, or a little, like, if you get emails or whatever, and just keep them, just save them. Because there will be times where you do start beating yourself up and you start thinking less of yourself and, I'm not good enough, and everyone else's works better than mine. Da, da, da. But then you just, have that little book of little snippets and compliments of people saying, Caz, I'm blown away by what you've done. And, and you need, because we can forget about these good, nice compliments because we get overrun by what we think's going wrong and I'm not good enough. These are actual people who are saying nice things about you, and they're not doing it to kind of, blow smoke up your ass. They're genuinely saying you've done really good work. And it's hard to take that on at times, so definitely keep something like that. Keep a journal or something about what people have said, so you can just kind of go back. It's not an ego thing, it's like, you're keeping a book of all the nice things people have said about you. It's actually a really useful tool to be able to go back through and go, wow, I am doing good work. People are really appreciative of it, and I'm going to keep going forward, because that will then help you as well when you're like, okay, cost of living's going up, everything's going up. I'm going to need to put my prices up in order to compete. So I'm going to put them up by 5% on the next job, and just kind of look back at this and go and give yourself that confidence, or reach out to, someone, have a chat with them. And, like I mentioned, that golden hour thing is like, okay, I've got that confidence. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to go and adjust my website, and I'm going to say, or I'm going to send an email out, to people and say my pricing's going up. Give them a bit of notice, in a month's time. If there's any work you want to book in, you can book it in with me now, but just to let you know that my pricing will be going up by 5% in a month's time. Some people may take that as a sales tactic to try to get rush work in, but it's not. You're doing it genuinely. There are sometimes you can have problems in your own head where you want to do something, and I'm be honest, that's where I'm at with some things right now, in that you need to do the sales piece, but it feels like it's a tactic. I was almost like that with this live stream. It feels like it's just a sales tactic, but it's not. It's genuinely, I want to genuinely help people, but I have to do these things in order to get that out there. And so I was, just going through YouTube comments and stuff, and people saying nice things, and you get people who say bad things. But the weird thing is, the bad things are the ones that stick. Good compliments massively outweigh the bad ones. Massively. The ratio is huge, like 99 to 1. If it was 100%, it's 99% to 1%. But we focus on the bad ones, and we hold on to those, and that's what drags us down or keeps us at a level. So yeah, I think a lot of us are quite common in not accepting compliments and kind of, taking them and using them in a positive way to move you forward. We just kind of sideline it and go, just doing my job, it's what I get paid for. Okay. And move on. And I can be just as guilty as that as well. So one of the other things I want to ask you as well is when it comes to clients, when we've been in the rat race for a long time and we're needing the work and we're needing the money and we're doing low prices and stuff, how difficult do you find it to say no to clients?
I think, I think in the early days, very tricky to really understand what projects I should have been taking on, and understanding that saying no isn't a missed opportunity. In fact, it's gaining an opportunity to do something else that's more suited for you. Again, that's something that I know we've discussed through our chats, through our mentoring, if you like. That is what was key. I kept thinking that I can't say no because it means this, this, and this, and overwork and burnout, etc. Now I'm more, mindful of that. That saying no is much like going to a job interview. Often you find people being disappointed that they didn't get a job if they've gone for an interview, but a lot of the time it wasn't the right job for them anyway, and that's why they didn't get it. And I think it's not about being negative. So yeah, I think saying no is always a hard one because we're dealing with something that is uncertain. We don't know what the implications of that saying no is. But I think we can say no to a project, but keep saying to ourselves, yes, I'm going to keep trying to search for the thing that I know is the right job for me, or I'm going to do something positive in place of that no. I'm going to fill that time with something that is positive and productive to help me and my business get better and have a benefit. It's not about saying no and then chilling on the Xbox all day. Which is, not going to do anybody any good. So, I think as well, like, hearing what you were just saying there about how much of our issues are in our own head, like, I think half the problem is I was trying to think of what creativity was the other day about, creativity. And then I sort of clicked that actually creativity to me is conversation with myself. And sometimes that conversation can turn into an argument, and sometimes that argument can turn into something that's really dramatic. And it's at that point that you really look over your shoulder to try and find that person to speak to, and you realize, you're a freelancer working in your own environment, and all you've got are these four walls. So that is where I think, as an advocate for finding somebody to talk to, it's really important because it allows you to start dialoguing with a real person and getting out of it. I think in conversating with yourself is a huge part of creativity, yes, but it's when it manifests and spirals out of control, you head down that funnel and then that's it, it's game over. You catastrophize and, you've gone from designing a logo to losing your house and your business in the space of half an hour. So, it's really a minefield in the head.
Yeah, it is difficult. And one of the things as well about saying no is you don't necessarily have to say no to the entire project. It's just, sometimes it's just saying no to a timescale. Sometimes it's just saying no to budget. It doesn't mean, what you're trying to do is you're trying to assert some authority in your role as the designer, because they're hiring you for your expertise. But it ends up being that the client can take control over the whole project and start, taking control of your hand and, what about if we try this and what if we try that? If you don't really get a grasp of that, so it's just about saying no. So if the client says, oh, what about if we do this? Well, that's not, you want to use language like, I hear what you're saying, I understand why you've said that. Let's go back and and it's, it's guiding the conversation. It's not always just about, no, you can't have that. There have been times where I have flatly said no to certain ideas because it was just ridiculous. And most of the time the client is very receptive to it. Okay, I understand you're the one, you're the expert. But if you don't say that, they'll just continually push on it. And so it's not a bad thing. If you do need to say no to an entire project, then that might be a good thing too for the client. Because if you're not the right person to work with them, then it's probably not going to be the best project that's at the end of it. So it's better that they have the opportunity to go and work with someone who's maybe more analytical, or maybe more technical as a designer, because we've all got different personalities and we all work in different ways. So it's about kind of understanding what the client is like as well at the start, and having have a process in place where you can kind of almost grade the client based on your initial conversations. What was in the email that they first sent? Was it difficult to get them on to commit to a time for a call? All of these little things should be kind of marked up, and you should kind of give them a score out of whatever, 10, 100, and go, they're kind of like borderline. I'm a bit worried, because if they're not going to come on a call to get the thing started, which is where everyone should be excited about starting the project. If they're difficult to track down there, what about when you need to speak to them to move the project forward at stage 2, stage 3, and you just can't get hold of them? That for me is a red flag, and that for me would be a no. You're obviously very busy, Mr. Smith, because you can't commit to that. Maybe what we should do is we should wait until you do have the time that you can commit in your diary, and we can lock that in, and we can work on this project for you. That'll go one of two ways. They will agree to that, or they will say, no, I need to get this project done now. And then that's when you have to have the authority and value your own self-worth, and just say, well, I don't think I'm the right designer for you on this occasion, because I have a process which demands this amount of time to do things properly, and I'm not going to be able to do that for you. So, but having those types of conversations in your own head, if you're not used to it and you don't kind of know what the things are to say, are really difficult. But having someone to just kind of bounce off before you go back to that client and give you, I know Chloe likes the phrase, to give you that golden hour where you're confident, right, I'm going to go and speak to Mr. Smith and I'm going to tell him, this is how I work. The only way that this is going to be a really successful project is if he's on board and he can meet me at these times, and I'll tell him that I'm not going to take up a lot of his time. All I want is half an hour every 2 weeks, and we'll really focus on the project and we'll move it forward. And you go there and you use that golden hour of confidence to get that done. And then the outcome will be whatever it is. It'll either go ahead, or you've saved yourself a lot of hassle and you use, your momentum to go and do other things. And I've seen that from Caz. I've seen him, going away and doing that. I've also seen, Caz in situations where I've been in the past, where I've just been like Caz said, and it sounds funny when you say it, but it goes from logo design to losing your house. It's easily done. You just go on this mad narrative of of everything's going to go wrong, nothing's going to go right, and then you're like, oh, that's it. I'm just I don't want to do design anymore. It's too stressful. I want to get a job in Tesco. I want to get a job wherever. Something that doesn't give me this stress. But to be honest, every job has stresses, and it's a shame. And this is one of the things, one of the reasons for me to want to do the mentoring as well, is it's a shame for the industry to lose talented people because of the outside stresses of pricing, getting jobs in the first place, all of that stuff. And those things can be, they can be sorted out. You can work on it. But when you're on your own, it just seems insurmountable, because you're looking at the top of the mountain going, I need this. And there's just no way I'm climbing that on my own. And that's the whole thing. You don't want to climb on your own when you're climbing with a partner, because you want to have that safety rope so that if you fall, there's someone there to catch you and pull you back up. And then that's a lesson learned, and you move, you move up to the top of the mountain.
I think as well, like talking about the point that you made, from kind of doing logo design to losing your house, it kind of is credit to the imaginations of designers, really, isn't it? We can create so much good stuff, and be proud of that, but creativity comes with the product of designing horror movies in our head, of things going wrong, and you often then start to go down this world of trying to think your way out of a problem, And you really can't think your way out of a problem, is what I've learned. So that's probably a lot of the reasons why experience tells me now which jobs I should be saying yes to and which jobs I should be saying no to, and getting a feel for certain red flags, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I think it's about learning to be confident with the yes or no that you decide to say in your day-to-day business. If you say yes to something, relish that creative opportunity. If you say no to it, again, relish that creative opportunity, because it is not an opportunity lost, it's an opportunity gained.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it is just our creative mind playing tricks on us a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I mean, your situation, my situation is slightly different at the moment because, we're talking about turning work away, and there'll be people who are watching or saying, well, I'm not getting enough work in. I can't say no to things. But you still can say no to it, because if it's not the right work, it's just, yes, you have to pay your bills, and yes, you have to bring money in, but you're going to keep yourself in that constant loop of not being able to kind of move up to the next step. And, that's a tough place to be as well. And that's generally when people just, go, I just, I'm going to get a job someplace else. I just want to quickly check, because I'm aware of the time, because anyone who watches my streams knows that I can go on, and I just don't want to take this on for too long. I just want to make sure to get through all the questions. Lisa's kind of commented there saying it's funny how we can think, if I do this, I might ruin my life, but if I do this, I might boost my career to a whole new level. Often feels unrealistic. The negative option always feels like the easiest one, or the one that's most likely to happen. And as Lisa said there, the one where it might boost my career, we always give that short odds. Oh, but it's probably, and then we start to catastrophize that. Yeah, but if I do this, then that's not going to, then this will happen and that will happen. So rather than taking the positive aspect of it, we can very quickly move back into our safe zone, which is well, I don't want the worst to happen, so I'm going to close the doors again and just keep myself locked up and just live with what I have, rather than taking that leap of faith sometimes, doing it. The one logo concept is a massive leap of bravery and faith for most people the first time they do it. I know it was for me, but as long as you have an understanding of the process of the one logo concept, you're not just basically going from, hey, I normally do 3 to 5, and then you follow the same process that you would do for that, and you just chuck 4 of them away and present one. There's a different process. You need to involve the client a bit more, and so that they're on board and they're not just being surprised by this one concept that they have no idea about. They do have an idea of what's going to be coming. So that's then it's less of a risk, and it is still brave, because it's a new process that you're trying out, and so there's bravery to that. But it's not risky, because you're doing all of the right work, so that when you show the one concept, the client goes, of course that's the right one. It fits perfectly from everything that we've been talking about and you've been teaching me about, because this is where, I know Lise and I have talked about this before, this is where a little bit of knowledge on brand strategy is really going to help you. In fact, it's a must. I'd say if you're going to move to the one logo concept approach, you must have a fairly good understanding of strategy, because you're going to be leveraging that quite a bit when you present the concept to the client, because it's the strategy which is going to hold up that concept is the right approach. If you just turn up with a design and just say it looks cool, if that client says, I don't think it looks cool, where do you go from there? But if the client says, I don't think that looks cool, but you have the backup of the strategy to say, yes, but we're building this logo based on the strategic work that we've done, which is our target audience, personality, attributes, all of that, and you say this concept reflects all of that, then the client has to agree that that's then the right concept for the brand. Doesn't matter if they like it personally or not, it's the right thing for the brand. So there's a lot more work goes into it. So let's see. So we jumped ahead talking about the one logo concept thing there. I suppose my last question is, so there's going to be a lot of people out there who, are, stressed, burned out, worrying about money, struggling to get their ideal clients. What did you try? Because obviously one of the answers is get a mentor, right? It's not what I'm wanting you to say. What other things have you tried, to kind of increase your knowledge and stuff, over whether you were in an agency or whilst freelancing? What stuff have you tried?
So I guess do you mean in terms of like design?
So like, courses, like you can sign up to courses, go to events, go to workshops. Have you tried, any other things?
I think it's honestly, I have done things like courses, Skillshare, Domestika when I wanted to learn stuff, YouTube, etc. Again, it kind of goes back to that needing to create something for the reason of having the job in hand, or learning on the job. So it could be that's when those courses come into play and be really helpful. I think a lot of the time it's really about being around the right people. Like if it's other designers, you've got designers that are skilled in certain things, you pick off them. And whether that's digital or being in groups, we met in groups like Logo Geek community, etc. I think it's just being interactive, putting yourself, there's a saying, isn't there, around putting yourself around the people and you will become those people.
Surround yourself with the right people. I suppose my question wasn't around sort of courses and workshops for design, more from a business perspective, how to deal with pricing, how to deal with customers, the conversational part of it, it could be as simple as going to business networking events and hanging around other business people and seeing how they deal with things. And you'll see a lot of bad habits because there's a lot of sort of forced sales, very salesy and crappy marketing tactics go on there. So I often use those as an example of, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to stand out by being more genuine, more truthful, more honest. And yes, it's probably a more slow road, but you hopefully will build a reputation of being a genuine, an honest person that, is doing good work for stuff like that. So, did you do anything like that?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I mean, in fact, I did when I was interviewed on Logo Geek with Ian Paget. That episode was about networking as a designer, and what I found that I was really good at, because I had a genuine interest, it was an honest, motive of mine, was going to certain like co-working environments, coffee shops, where business people would hang out, go in there for a few days, and eventually you become that face that's familiar, taking the courage to go up and talk to people, listening, again, going back to that skill of listening and interacting in certain networking events, being invited along. And then eventually that referral, a lot of my work is referral based, and just staying active in that sort of business community. I think we all have that business community where we are. Keeping it local is quite good. It's also good for mindset of just getting out and being out of a different environment. Networking, I guess, is a skill of mine, and it's not one that I've tried to learn or be strategic about. It's one I genuinely enjoy. I like meeting people, and I like talking, and I like to hang out in co-working environment. Just, I guess, naturally use that to my advantage, or in the business sense.
I think you're a rare breed there, because it's not something that I enjoy. I'm very quite shy person at heart, so going into co-working spaces and stuff, I would probably just sit on my own. So that you definitely got you've got an advantage there if if that's something that you love, and definitely if if it is something that you have, then utilize that. But yeah, one of the things that you mentioned about going and kind of hanging out and being the face is just build a reputation as a listener. Don't be going in there going, hey, do you need business cards? Hey, do you need this? Hey, do you need that? Just go in and listen. just go and listen, let them tell you about their business and stuff. And then maybe after, like you said, after a couple of weeks where you've become a known face and being there, then you can start to, say, oh, so, you were telling me the other day that, you were struggling to find, have you done anything about that? Maybe that's something I could help you with. And because you've listened and you've remembered and you're asking about, how are things going? You said this. People will really take that on, because in most business networking events, everyone in the room is trying to sell to everyone in the room, and they're not really listening about what the other person's problem is. They're just thinking, when can I sell my thing to you? When can I sell it? And so they're not going to take stuff on. If you can actively go in as a listener and genuinely listen to what people are saying without even selling anything, you can maybe hand over a business card at the end and say, oh, here's my business card, be great to, catch up again or whatever. And you're just not, chances are what will happen anyway is that they will say, oh, tell me a bit about what you do. The other person will ask you, because you've listened to them, there's almost a guilt complex of, oh, I've not let them talk about their stuff, and you can maybe just do a little kind of 60-second pitch about it, but definitely be a listener in the room. So you're definitely doing, you're doing all that stuff right, Caz, and that's awesome.
I think as well with my clients, there's a genuine friendship there as well. Like it's not always about just being a service to somebody. Like I've got genuine, I care about the clients that work with me on a friendship level as well, because that's, you're being honest and they seeing you as you. You're not putting on a face. You're not trying to be something you're not. And
it's the longer term relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're in it for the long term, long haul.
You dropped in you mentioned the Logo Geek interview, and what I'll do is I'll make sure I add the link to that in the sort of the description area in YouTube. I'll leave that in there. I'll need to dig that out, and I'll pop that in there. But yeah, there's a lot of really good interviews on Ian's Logo Geek podcast. He interviews not just, the people that we all look up to, the big famous people, but he interviews, not listless cause of normal designers, people who are just, getting on with the job. So, he's interviewed Caz, he's interviewed me, and he's interviewed a lot of other people. And I always find those interviews really interesting, because there's not really sort of anything, they're not trying to gain anything from it. It's just an open conversation. I think my one was about confidence. I think, if I remember rightly, I think my one was about, having confidence, which is funnily enough, part of what I'm trying to do with all the mentoring and that. But Matt's saying here, because I didn't say hi to Matt. Matt's joined. Caz and I both know Matt very well. And Matt's saying, you got to have a process for stuff like that. And you do, have a process for everything. So, so if you want to check out that podcast with Caz, I will link that in. Caz's website, if you want to go have a look at his work. I know he'll be like, don't, because he'll be like all designers, we're all like, oh, we need to update it. Our portfolio is not great.
Instagram's the best place to check out my work, 100%.
So okay, fine. So where can they find you on Instagram then, Caz?
Oh, Cusumano.uk.
Okay, I'll drop that into the description.
And Behance, I've started to use Behance now, which within the last week or so I've started to upload.
I don't use. I'm terrible for that kind of stuff. Not posting up to date work, and but that's kind of when you start to get a good handle on things and you build up the relationships that Caz is talking about with clients, where they become your friends and it's longer term relationships. You get regular work, and one of the things is, as a newer designer, I never say younger designer, because you can come into design at 65. As a newer designer, there's always that kind of the portfolio. I need to have a great portfolio site, and because you've not built up the longer term relationships. As you become a more experienced and longer term designer, and you build up much stronger relationships, and you get more regular work from referral and stuff like that, your website and your portfolio tends to get left a little bit, because it's not being used to generate the new work. It's the relationships that you've built up with your existing clients and who they know, and the new work comes in that way. They're not going, I mean, they might be referred, they might say, oh, you should go speak to Caz, and then they'll go and look at the website. But also as well, we always think our websites look worse than they are because we're so used to looking at them all the time. But someone who's coming to it for the first time hasn't seen any of this before, and so it's new to them. So we need to kind of think, again, it's another area to be kind to yourself. You don't need to constantly be updating your, portfolio and stuff, but you do want to kind of keep, you want to keep in there. So I've just got, just got to say, thanks to Caz for coming on. We've hit, we're past the hour, so I think we've been talking for an hour now, but we could go on forever. I know we could.
Absolutely.
So Henry's just said, well, you can probably read it. Holy crap, his work, and then love heart eyes, right? So that goes into your little compliments book, Caz, right?
Absolutely, I really appreciate that. Thank you. That's really kind of you.
Because Henry's a talented guy as well. This is where you need to listen to people, and people that don't know you are saying you do good stuff. Then you need to do that. Chloe's saying, such a great conversation, so I caught it. Thank you so much, Chloe. It was so awesome to have you on here. We need to catch up. I know we say that all the time and then we never get one organized, but we need to get something sorted.
I've got a Squarespace site to design.
If you've got any questions, then Chloe is the Squarespace, let's say the Squarespace queen. Chloe's all over Squarespace. You should probably connect up on LinkedIn or something. So I just wanted to finish by saying, just to talk about, I've had more than a few interviews now about mentoring, and the stumbling block is always the cost. And I have a full understanding of that, that, cost is an issue if you've not got enough clients coming in, to kind of like, you're like, oh, I've not even got that coming in from client work, so I can't really afford to do that. So I'm not going to be, kind of pushing on that. If you want to have a chat about mentoring, then, the easiest way to do that is to, probably just email me, call it Pixels Inc., and we can arrange to have a little chat about it to see if you're the right, because that's the thing, is to see if you're ready for mentoring, or if you're the right fit. But all I'll say is that I didn't have the money for coaching or mentoring when I needed it, but I used the money I had to pay for it. And it was one of the things, like Lee said, it was, I was catastrophizing. I go, if I spend this money, I'll have nothing. And if I don't get any new work in the next month, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. But I was in such a painful point in my career where I was working so hard and doing so many jobs and not making enough money. I was just making ends meet, that I thought I need to do something. And so I just took the leap and went, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to use the fact that I'm using this money to make sure I hold myself accountable to enacting on the stuff that this person is kind of, because I can advise and I can give you, I can let you know what worked for me and things that I know have worked for other people, but it's up to the person to enact on it. So, if you're going to pay money for mentoring, you need to be prepared and ready to actually do the horrible, scary things, like maybe move to the one concept approach, or increase your pricing, or say no to things. But by having the mentor and having someone to speak to, then you're not all inside your own head, and you will, you'll have a lot of those golden hour moments where, you'll go on and you'll join LinkedIn. That might be a golden moment thing. It might be just joining LinkedIn, and then you put your first post up on LinkedIn, and all of these things will be done in sort of golden hour moment. And you might have a golden hour moment when you wake up in the morning. You might just feel really good that day. Go and do the things which you're finding the hardest to do, because if you leave it to the afternoon, you're probably just going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So I have a full understanding about, that money can be an issue, but it's, you can hold on to it, the money you have, really super tight, but nothing's changing. It's a bit like kind of having a car outside and having a can of petrol or gas, if you're in America, in your house. You've got the gas and you're keeping it because you might need it someday. You might need it, but the car's sitting out there going nowhere. So you need to think about the car like your opportunities. The further you go down the road, the more opportunities you're going to meet and the more new scenery you're going to see. But you're going to hold on to that gas because you might need it someday. But all that's going to happen is it's going to slowly evaporate anyway, and you've not used the car. It's probably a terrible analogy, I know, but it's the best thing I could think of. Is about, you need to use what you have in order to give yourself as many opportunities that you can get. And one of the things as well is, and I'm not even saying use me as a mentor, there's lots of mentors out there. One of the things that you'll have with a mentor is you'll have access to their network as well, so you never know what might open up in terms of that. The more people you speak to, you can be introduced to other people, introduced to other groups. You could be advised, actually, you know what, I'm in this group, this membership group, this would be a great thing for you. There's lots of business owners in there always looking for designers to do work. Join that group and I'll put out a post recommending you. There's all sorts of opportunities that can be done there. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to thank everyone for joining. It's always good to see faces on the stream. Could have just been me and Caz having a chat, but you all came along, you all showed up. Chloe's saying definitely connect.
Brilliant, yeah.
And she's, you're getting all the love heart eye emojis. What's that all about? I don't get those. I never get those in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Not even my Instagram, from my website. That's brilliant. Thank you. I really kind.
Thanks for coming along, everyone. I suppose that I'll just kind of give the. Do I actually have? No, I probably don't have it on this screen. But if you haven't joined the Discord, please join the Discord. It's a good way to get, access to me, access to, really good people like Lise and Henry and David who are on here. We'll always have a good chat. I just spotted as well, just as he scrolled off screen, I just spotted that Mr. Chris Green is on the stream as well, and he said that you're his favourite Italian. So, it's all...
What a guy.
It's all good. But thanks for coming on, Caz. Hopefully people, have learned a bit from your story and the great moves that you're making. I'm like super proud of what you're doing and what you've achieved, and it's long overdue for you. You've worked so hard and you're doing such great work, and you've just been so undervalued for what you've been providing. So it's great to see you making moves into that space. And you're getting asked to be interviewed on other things. And I think you got featured on Adobe Live the other day or something, didn't you?
Yeah, that was kind. Yeah, so I got featured on Adobe Live and interviewed by Ian Paget. I've got my own podcast as well, See Through Design. So
I'll put a link into that as well. I need to go. There's a lot of stuff I need to put into the description.
Be in a position to give back as well, and I think that's
your podcast. Your podcast's really good as well. So I know you've got the double act going there. So
Liam Jackson, my good friend Liam Jackson, who we work with. As well.
So it's another thing though, isn't it? It's that thing of having two people. On a podcast, the conversation can go many ways. But so I'm going to end it there. Thanks for coming, Caz. Thank you, everyone. If I'll see you in the Discord, I'll see you soon. If not, I will see you next week. And stay creative. Get the horns up, Caz. Right, everyone. Catch you soon. Bye for now.
Oh wow, that was brilliant.